Here with us now is music legend Chuck Leavell, keyboardist and musical director for the Rolling Stones and former member of the Allman Brothers Band. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today, because you have played with countless artists and performed even at President Carter's 100th birthday celebration in Atlanta. But really, to rewind it all, Chuck, I know that you've known the former president for a really long time. I just want to first start with how you got to know him, how you became friends, and your thoughts on his passing.
Well, great to be with you, Laura. Thanks so much for inviting me. Yes, friends for a very long time. Back in '73, we were recording Dickie Betts' first solo album called Highway Call. and Carter was governor at the time, and we got a notice that the governor wanted to come down to the studio. And we thought, well, okay, probably be a photo op for 15 minutes, and that'll be it. But in fact, he came, he stayed for about 2 hours. He asked really great questions about the state of the music business in Georgia. He was very interested in that. He was very interested in the recording process. And so we were kind of blown away that he stayed that long and asked such good questions and was genuinely interested in what was going on. And then about a year and a half later, when he announced his candidacy for president, we all decided that we would support that, and we raised a lot of money. This was the first time, if you recall, that the government would do the matching fund, so we could do concerts and raise $500,000. The government would match it. And the Allman Brothers Band participated, but also Charlie Daniels Band, Marshall Tucker Band, and others.
It's really incredible, and I know the pictures that we're looking at you provided for us to give us some context. What's happening there in the picture? There's the black and white picture where you're up against, it looks like you guys are all sitting, and he autographed that one. If you could give us some context of that picture, if we can put it back up, because I think it's so great, because not a lot of people have it. This is a NewsNation exclusive, watching some of your memories unfold here. Some of the pictures that there's that one, and then we have another one. But tell us a little bit about what's happening there.
Well, the first one that we saw is from backstage at what was the old Omni in Atlanta, Georgia, where we were doing a concert to raise funds for him. And we did I can't quite recall, I think there was maybe 3. We did one, I think, in Rhode Island somewhere. So that's the context there. That's Dickie Betts with the cigarette. And that's Don Johnson, by the way, next to Dickie.
Oh, is that right? I'm so glad you said that, because I was showing that to my husband, who's also a musician, and we were trying to figure out who that was. Don Johnson. How about that? Yeah, well, Variety calls Carter the rock and roll president, and there's this great documentary by the same name, and it's a really incredible story. And you say that even though he didn't play an instrument himself, there was something in his DNA that felt the music. What did you mean by that? Because you mentioned that he asked really good questions. And I think that's so important when we're building relationships and letting people into the inner circle, right? But what did you mean by that?
Well, one of the things he reveals in one of his books is that as a young person in the Navy, he had a roommate, and they had a love of classical music at the time. And so they would go out and buy various different copies of a concerto or a quartet or whatever it might be by several different artists, so that they could discern the differences in techniques that the different artists would interpret a certain piece of music. I found that fascinating. And so it wasn't just a casual love of music. It was a lot deeper than that.
A lot deeper, and for many decades, right? I mean, the one thing we're talking about him being the rock and roll president, but he also had this deep love of gospel music, country music, jazz. We learn all about that in that documentary I was mentioning. I also wanted to ask you about how you guys came to, you mentioned it there, about getting out there and raising money for him, but it was because he was low on campaign funds and name recognition. So when you guys met him, it sounds like everybody just really gelled. Like, you guys met him, you liked him, you said, yeah, let's get this guy to the White House. Is that how it happened?
Laura, he was such a likable human being. He really was. You know, when you were in his presence, he made you feel comfortable. He was a great listener, Carter. I don't know if people remember, but, you know, during his campaign, he was getting 3 hours of sleep a night, and he was actually staying in the homes of some of the people he would visit so that he could listen to them and hear their concerns. And He was just a great listener all the way around and an easy person to be friends with.
You know, go ahead.
If I may share also, we had a shared love of the outdoors. He was a great environmentalist, conservationist. As you know, he came to our place here in Georgia at Charlene Woodlands, where we live and own property, and we walked the woods together. We talked about the importance of forests and all the many things they give us. So we had a lot of shared passions.
It's really incredible and such a legacy. I also, because you were in the Allman Brothers Band, the late Greg Allman told Conan O'Brien, we found this clip, a great story about Carter telling him about his plans to run for president. Let's take a listen.
You were friends with President Carter when he was a governor,
right.
And he told you, I'm going to be president someday, and you didn't believe it.
Oh, I laughed so hard about it.
You laughed at Governor Carter when he said, I will be president.
I laughed. Well, yeah.
I mean, that's a fun memory from Greg Allman, but I mean, he was really serious, and they actually, I understand, had some good conversations on a porch at some point, a late night talk where he said, you know, I'm really serious about this, and Greg Allman said, I'm going to help you. So how do you explain that close relationship? Because it's very special.
Well, because we had all met him at the recording studio that I mentioned when he was governor, and there were other meetings subsequently after that, and we just got to know him, got to be friends with him, and we believed in the man. You know, don't forget, this was post-Watergate. There was a lot of distrust of government, and Jimmy Carter was a honest man, a man of character, of deep, good, honest character. And we all felt that, and I think that America felt that at the time, and that's why he was elected. So, you know, we were supporters right from the get-go.
And before I let you go, if there are plans, obviously, to remember him next month, do you have any plans to take part in any of those ceremonies?
Well, this is very early in the planning stages, I believe. From what I understand, he'll be in Atlanta for a time. I think I'll try to make that if I can. Then he'll be in Washington, D.C. That might be a little difficult for me to make schedule-wise. But yes, I do want to participate. I want to pay tribute, pay honor to him. As a matter of fact, real quickly, I was planting trees today in a certain tract of our land, about a 100-acre tract, and I had finished the planting process, and I thought about Jimmy because he was also a tree farmer and our shared love of trees and forest, and I decided to call that tract the Carter Forest here at Charlene.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Chuck Leavell, I'm so glad that you came on the program today. Thank you so much for being with us here on News Nation. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Laura.
We'll talk soon, Chuck. Thank you so much.